A $68,000 deal without ever physically seeing the property or meeting those owners face to face. And I did it using a strategy that I call Sandwich Lease Options, or control without ownership. You don't want to miss this episode, guys. See you in a second. Now, before I dive into my sandwich lease option strategy, be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, go on ahead and smash that like button because you're gonna enjoy today's episode, I promise you. And for those of you who are new to the channel, I'm Shaun Young, the virtual guy, and I love all things real estate. Now, as promised, guys, I'm gonna share with you an awesome $68,000 deal that I did without ever physically seeing the property or meeting those owners face to face, using a strategy that I call sandwich lease options. And what is a sandwich lease option? Well, I'll break it down very quickly for you in a nutshell. A sandwich lease option is basically a lease option, which is a lease with the option to purchase at the end of that lease. The reason why it's called a sandwich lease option, because for whatever reason, you're choosing to stay in the middle of this lease, hence the word sandwich. And one of the reasons why you'd be wanting to stay in the middle of that lease is because of the potential monthly rental spreads that you can make on that property. My suggestion is if you can make at least $300 or more per month on that property, then you want to go ahead and stay in the middle and use what's called the sandwich lease option strategy. All right, so now that you know what a sandwich lease option is, let me quickly break down to you what a lease option is. A lease option is basically where a tenant buyer rents out a property, hence the word lease, has a time period, and at the end of that time period, they have the option to purchase that property for whatever has been negotiated with that seller. How do you find a lease option? Well, you got to be willing to find a seller that's willing to sell their home on terms, meaning that they're willing to take their equity later, not all at once right now. And usually dealing with lease options, there is a mortgage that's in place. So the seller's gonna want PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, to be covered in order for this to work. So let's say that this seller, their PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, equals out to $2,000 per month. And they say, hey, I'm willing to do this if you can cover my $2,000 per month. And why would someone be willing to do this? Guys, there are a number of people out here that are in predicaments that they didn't foresee ever finding themselves in. And they need people like us to help them get out of those positions and predicaments. So let me give you an example. This particular homeowner that I'm gonna talk to you about in this example today, she's not from here. She's not from the Atlanta, Georgia area. And yes, I do live in the Atlanta, Georgia area, but I never saw this property physically and I never met the owner face to face. So let's get back to the example. So this seller has a property that's based here in Atlanta, Georgia, but she has a sick mother that lives in Wisconsin. So she was literally trying to go back and forth from Wisconsin to Atlanta, Georgia every 2 weeks. It was becoming quite costly. So she decided that she didn't want two mortgages and wanted to go ahead and foundate herself out in Wisconsin where her mother was, so she'd be more readily available to help her out with any of her medical needs. So that left her property in Georgia wide open. And the seller didn't want to be a landlord. She had already went down that road, which is why she was going back and forth to Georgia and Wisconsin in the first place, because she did try to rent out the property and the last renters actually tore the place up. So she moved back to Atlanta, spent a year living in the property, getting it all fixed back up, looking super nice so that she could put it back on the market. That's when I ran into her. And I found her because she was listing the property as a for sale by owner opportunity. She had already kind of been down the gamut of using a realtor. She knew that she didn't want to pay commissions. She knew what she knew and she wanted what she wanted. So in those type of situations, being an investor, you can come right in and provide a transactional solution for that seller. So guys, as you can see, the seller was in a pretty motivated situation. This was a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood. And with lease options and sandwich lease options, that's the varying difference between doing a regular wholesale deal and doing one of these type of transactions. A wholesale deal, I call it the ugly house business. With my lease options and sandwich lease options, I call that the pretty house business. And what classifies it as a pretty house? Not just how it looks cosmetically, but is it in a desirable neighborhood? Is this a neighborhood that I would live in? Does it have a good school district? Are there good amenities for families that are looking to establish themselves in a good community? All right, now that we've got that established, let's talk about the numbers. So now that I understood the seller's motivation and what her situation was, I let her know that there was 2 ways that I could buy her property. 1 would be for an all cash offer, and 2 would be if I purchased it on terms. And of course she said, well, what are terms? And I let her know that terms would be that I could give her what she's asking for the property, but I couldn't give it to her all at once today. If she would allow me, let's say, 3 years to lease this property and then purchase at the end of the lease, would that be something she'd be interested in? And she said that she was. The reason why she said she was interested in it is because I let her know that not only would I be covering those rents and taxes and insurance and all that that's needed to be covered at the first of every month, but I'd also be handling any repairs that would be needed during the time of the lease. So she wouldn't be a landlord like she was before, fixing doorknobs, broken switches, broken toilets, any of that stuff. The only time I'd be contacting her or reaching out to her would be to deposit the money into her account on the 1st of each month, or to pay her mortgage directly on the 1st of each month, and to contact her when the end of this lease is up to say, hey, are you ready to go ahead and get cashed out? Being that this lady was a little more sophisticated, she understood the concept of terms right away, and it made the process that much easier. So guys, we negotiated that I buy that property for what's owed on the mortgage at the time of closing. That's right, guys. What's owed on the mortgage at the time of closing. She didn't ask for a down payment. The only thing that she was concerned with was that PITI, that principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. She wanted to ensure that that was going to be covered each month and every month on time so that she could focus on her new place out in Wisconsin. So guys, you would be amazed at how many opportunities are out there just like this, where motivated sellers are in a predicament where they need to get out of their property, and it's a pretty house. It's not an ugly teardown or something that's falling down, but a pretty house that you would even want to live in if you needed to. All right guys, we got that out of the way. PITI, which was principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, equated to right under $2,000 per month. It was $1,995. So right under $2,000. So that's the only thing that was required from me to give to that seller each month for a 3-year period, because that was what the lease was written for. It was actually written for a 3-year period with the ability to extend every 12 months if needed, for up to 5 years. So guys, I basically have 5 years to control this property to ensure that I can make the maximum return on my investment of time. All right guys, so you're probably asking, so what did you do? How did you buy this property? How were you able to pay $2,000 a month for this property and pay whatever's owed on the property at the time of closing? Guys, very simple. I put a qualified tenant buyer in place. That's right guys, a qualified tenant buyer. I have a company that I use that screens my tenants for me, lets me know what their credit worthiness is, their debt to income ratio, and a whole bunch of other stuff that lets me know where they stand in the position to be able to get a mortgage on this property in the future. And guys, once you get one of these pretty houses in a desirable neighborhood locked up on a contract, you're not gonna have any problem finding qualified tenant buyers to fill those properties. And why? Because 80% of Americans out here can't qualify for a traditional mortgage for whatever reason. Whether it's they're new on a new job, they've had a divorce, a number of factors prevent people from being qualified to get a traditional mortgage. So that's where we come in. We come in as the solution. We help sellers sell their home who are in motivated, tough situations. We help qualified tenant buyers on their path to home ownership. And we also help the community's home values stay high by keeping, again, qualified tenant buyers in place in those properties who are gonna take care of them in a much different fashion than just a typical renter, because they have skin on the game. And what do I mean by skin in the game? Skin in the game, not skin on the game. And what do I mean by skin in the game? Guys, my qualified tenant buyer on this particular deal put down a non-refundable $20,000 non-refundable option fee. And what is a non-refundable option fee? It's just what it says, guys. It's a $20,000 non-refundable option fee. And what that means is at the end of this option, if they exercise the right to purchase this property, that $20,000 will be applied towards the purchase price or towards credits to ensure that they get a down payment credit when they do go get qualified with the lenders. So my qualified tenant buyer put down a $20,000 non-refundable option fee. I also let that qualified tenant buyer know that the rents would be $25.50 per month. We signed a 3-year lease, and at the end of that lease, they'll be purchasing that property for $348,000. Keep that number in mind, guys. So at the end of that 3-year lease, they had paid me in rentals on a monthly basis $19,800. $19,800, guys. You heard it right. And when it was time for that qualified tenant buyer to cash out at the end of that lease, at the end of that 3-year lease, the property had amortized down to $320,000, meaning it was $320,000 owed on the mortgage at the time of closing. And if you recall, I negotiated with my seller that I would buy the property for whatever is owed on the mortgage at time of closing. So guys, I sold the property, or I listed it for $348,000, put a qualified tenant buyer in place that put down $20,000 non-refundable option fee money up front. They paid $19,800 over a 3-year period in rents. Then at the end, when we cashed them out, or when they actually closed out, that $348,000 that they owed versus the $320,000 that was owed to my seller, there's a difference in between there, guys. There's a difference between there. And guess where that difference goes? In HIP National Bank, the best bank in the world, in my opinion. And that was a $28,000 difference, guys. So in total, that deal translated out to be $67,800. That's right, guys, a $67,800 payday. And that's all without ever owning that property, without ever physically seeing the property or physically meeting the tenant buyer. And again, this is called control without ownership. This is one of my favorite methods, guys, in real estate investing. And if you want to learn how to do this exact same strategy that I'm talking about today, then I will leave a link down in the description for a webinar that I did with the godfather of lease options. His name is Ron LeGrand, a friend and mentor of mine. So be sure to check out that free webinar. It's gonna break down everything that you need to know about a sandwich lease option, a lease option, what is control without ownership, all that good stuff, so that you can go out there and start making a killing as well. All right, guys, I told you today's episode was gonna be epic, and I hope I didn't fail you. And if any of you out there feel that you would benefit from a dedicated coach that's gonna build the business for you, show you how to run it, and be dedicated to your success, then go on ahead and schedule a call with me and my team today using the link down in the description. Be sure to visit ShaunYoungCoaches.com today. I don't know what you guys are waiting for. Right now is the perfect time to go out there and make a lot of money. There's gonna be a lot of people needing our help in the very near future. And remember, guys, go out there, have fun, fail your way forward, take massive imperfect action. And remember, help me, help you, help us all. I'll see you on the other side.
This crown on my head, I'm seated on the throne. The top is so alone. Only thing that keeps me going is I know my city love me. I know my city love me. I know my city love me. I know my city love me.